It's 11 o'clock.
Oh, there it is.
Ooh, nice bass. Boom, 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 boom.
We're going to rattle them out there, man.
Is that the old break it, don't shake it? That'll don't prattle.
Oh, you get your shake already? Oh man, yeah. I'm just here jamming because I was thinking, this is the kind of day. This is a spring day. Oh, and there was
Well, I say we play this for just a moment.
just a little bit because I've been listening. I was listening to the Prince Philip funeral stuff as I drove in today. It was actually really
That was
very nice.
really nice, actually. Hey, this is Radio Science News that you folks are tuning into. This is April the 17th, 2021. For all you folks that keep track of prime numbers, this is Radio Science News episode number 781.
Whoa.
Could be a prime number, but it's actually the product of 11 and 71. Both ending in 1. Interesting that it is also a 1. I also want to let all you givers of fine, expensive gifts to know that you've got one day before my 63rd birthday.
Happy birthday, dear
I will accept
Robert.
all gifts.
Happy birthday to you.
To
And you
me.
notice I brought musical accompaniment.
I
with me today.
saw that. You even gave me some little pill bottle.
Well,
to
that's
shake.
shakeable Zyrtec.
Oh,
That's what
ooh.
it's like a springtime
Happy
sound.
a birthday to me.
Happy birthday, spring! You can shake Zyrtec and it sounds better than if you shake Claritin D. I don't know.
Isn't that interesting?
It has
I
a
did not
nice
know
little
that.
it has a nice little green lid too because this is allergy season, as you
Oh,
know.
yes, it is. Allergy relief. Thank you.
But anyway, I was feeling sciencey and I was thinking.
Well, yeah.
Actually, I was thinking. I was going through my collection of ukuleles. Because
You don't need to actually share that.
I know that's too much, but my thoughts were, we've been talking about our very good friend Ted Bradstrom,
Yes.
who's having
we
some health
hope that
issues.
you are doing well today.
So anyway, I was thinking about ukuleles. Because Ted is when we think
In
of Hawaii,
Hawaii, yep.
some people think of pineapples and fancy drinks with umbrellas, or maybe girls in hula skirts. We think of Ted Bradstrom.
We think of Ted Bradstrom.
I don't know, and then we think of telescopes too,
Yes.
and things like that.
Large,
But
deep
uh,
space telescope.
I thought to myself, I can figure out some way to work this ukulele into my thing because you'll notice this. It looks like a regular ukulele, right?
Yes, it does.
But the thing that's sciencey about it is, can you see these strings?
I was looking at the strings. They do not look like normal strings. In fact, they appear to be elastic.
Well, what they are is they're like high density polyethylene.
That's what they look like. Yeah.
And here's a tiny little instrument with like a 20-inch scale, not long.
Right.
And I thought, wait a minute, this is all our science, our science of the physics of sound thing. Is you have something stretched, it's under tension,
Right.
It has a certain length, it has a certain density. Well, on this particular thing, these little fat strings, this is literally the same scale as a big giant string bass.
I was going to say it sounds much larger than it is, only
Yeah.
because of the kind of strings head it uses.
Well, and it all makes perfect sense
Oh,
because
that's brilliant.
by just changing the math, somebody came around and said, ukulele bands usually don't have a bass. But in this case, this little thing, and
so that's a bass ukulele?
it's made by a company called Kala, which is a Hawaiian company that's been making all kinds of ukuleles. But it has built-in electronics and all kinds of onboard stuff. But these big strings,
And it's the normal size for a ukulele.
it is for a little ukulele player.
Is it ukulele or ukulele?
Most people say ukulele, or some people
Okay.
say pukulele. But
Pukulele,
I
yeah.
say
I
just say
certainly
ukulele.
see that, all right.
Anyway, I thought we could, instead of doing science today, maybe we just do a lot of
Just
music.
1 hour of ukulele. Everyone just tuned out.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of finished up my whole Tesla pickup truck song, and we're gonna send that off to Elon Musk, pretty
good.
soon. And I was working on my philosophy of life, because one of the things I want to talk about today, if you look down on the Launchpad of Science.
All right. You know what? I
get them there real quickly.
Should probably get our listeners to that.
I'll
if you go
practice
to
in the
my
back.
favorite webpage, yes, please, thank you. If you go to my favorite webpage on the internet, which is www.smartcenter.org, SMARTCENTER.org, you'll see a little trifecta rainbow down there. Those are the T-shirts. Just above that is the clickable Radio Science News, and I'm going to turn that on for my first time. I want to say, and I say this in a as often as I can. Richard takes in lots of information and lovingly puts this up for our sciencing convenience, which I think is really neat. Hey, speaking of Elon Musk, my wife told me after the episode last week that I need to tone it down. I think that was her phrase. Tone it down. She said, he is a very powerful man and he will get you.
No,
and I said, no, well, yeah, probably. But I just want to mention that, I was saying that Hattie does some childish kind of things sometimes.
That's right. Everybody can be that way, yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. He is claiming that he is now the Impetor of Mars.
What?
Which I think is fascinating. And when you look up the word impetor or impetator or however it's pronounced.
Hot potato?
A hot potato. It stands for commander, a title conferred under the Republic on a victorious general and under the empire of the emperor. He is claiming to be the emperor of Mars, essentially.
Fair enough.
So my rant of last week that some people thought was a little over the top, I don't think was far enough.
Well, that may be true.
So I don't know what's going on with the man.
Well,
but
listen,
he makes cool cars and he makes some very cool rocket ships that land, which I think is very
sometimes all over the place.
Sometimes everywhere.
Clean up that.
Clean up on aisle 5.
Well, I'll tell you what. I will just say let's extend to him our basically like a blanket apology. What do you say?
No. Not a chance.
Well, when he gets my song, "I'm a Cowboy in a Tesla pickup truck," he'll feel much better.
He will be very, very pleased, I'm sure. So that takes us to the Launchpad of Science, and I see a J&J pause. I assume that's the vaccine pause.
Yeah.
23,000 BC. I haven't seen that movie.
Raquel? No, that's not the one. It's a different one.
That's 1 million
Listen,
BC.
and this is going to be apropos. I need to say
23,000 BC.
The next what is the
Vax's
patch? Now, people are going to say, is this about that microneedle thing again? I am just going to say, first I need to give a shout out to our friend Steve Novotny.
Yes. Thank you, Steve.
He actually picked up on the idea and was willing to talk about what we've been ranting about the microneedle patch. And one of the things he said was, there's probably there'll probably be stuff coming out. This is actually something that it came out fairly recently, and I missed it. But apropos of the fact that he was kind of saying there will be new stuff coming.
Yes,
this will be cool.
Awesome.
Now, of course, I have to talk about Anglo-Saxon.
You gotta.
Now, this link, just for everybody, it's Anglo-Saxon that I have down here has to do with a really wonderful movie that has been produced called The Dig.
Yes,
it's about the Sutton Hoo site in England, and we talked about it. I'm always joking with people because my life is kind of a dig. Everything that I have to do, like with yard work or gardening, I basically, to make it more fun, I try to do it sort of as an archaeological protocol.
I think that's a great idea.
And so I've been posting some interesting things. I was just out cleaning out some raspberry patches and clearing stuff, and I found this big metal object.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And on my Facebook page, anybody can go to my Facebook pages and make fun of me if they want.
Oh, good.
But I end up starting I hated to get started because I said it reminded me of the Stephen King classic Tommy Knockers. I don't know if you're familiar with that. He's out there in his New England farm and he's digging something and hits a piece of metal and it's just,
Clank.
First he thinks it's kind of straight, but then he realizes it has a slight curve. Well, of course it would if it's like a 200-foot diameter flying saucer that was buried, like 1,000 years ago under.
And
I don't want to talk about what happens. I get too scared. So I was thinking I should just not dig this thing up, and it ends up.
But
being
you should.
Well, it ends up being a big like 12 by 12 rolling door from a barn. That
Wow.
it's like a cool mystery. Maybe sometime we'll visit. it. But
from a barn.
it reminded me of this wonderful thing.
An alien barn?
No, I don't know. I was thinking I was going to measure the size, and then you could determine the actual frequency of the the radio telescope that it can make. But,
Okay.
But then we've gone so far off the track already. Anyway, I included it as this topic Anglo-Saxon because
Excellent.
there are so many interesting aspects of Anglo-Saxon. Like my wife said, "Wait a minute, you're not going to talk about Anglo-Saxon as in the news lately?" And I said, "No, because I think there's like a congresswoman like Marjorie Taylor Greene or something."
Or something.
Or because she's talking about all kind of Anglo-Saxon stuff. And I was thinking to myself, oh, well, wait a minute. That made me think of Richard Greene, who was the actor that played, if you were a little kid and you used to watch Robin Hood, Robin Hood, Richard Greene played Robin Hood. And I'm thinking, well, maybe she is an Anglo-Saxon.
Oh, okay.
But then the part that was really interesting relative to this popping up today, and I put it in the context of Prince Philip's funeral today, which I think, the parts that I saw were just actually marvelous stuff, beautiful
well
music.
done, yes.
They had the aspects of it that were almost like sciencey were really cool because everything was done with just impeccable adherence to COVID distancing.
Yes.
The really cool thing was that he had designed everything. I mean, he had planned well ahead for this. The particular Land Rover that he was, I guess the casket was carried. It was designed by him, and it's of course a hybrid.
Yes.
So he was a big advocate for like new energies and hybrid vehicles, and of course then he had it painted. He didn't have the Land Rover green. He painted it. My wife said it was a military green, but I thought it looked a little bit like John Deere green.
Yeah.
I think he was trying to do that. She says, no, don't kid yourself. So, but the part that I think was, again, I'm just going to take a 30-second diversion here because I'm a big fan of history and archaeology. This particular thing that I have is the Anglo-Saxon link about the dig is because this guy who was not really an archaeologist, he was a guy that did the work, the grunt work. And the movie is a wonderful thing about them looking at some mounds that are on her farm in this part of England. And when they finally find this huge, beautifully built boat that's been buried under a mound and realize that it's a very impressive and important funeral thing, and perhaps the king. At first, everybody's like, "Oh, it must be the Vikings," but he goes, "No, I don't think so. It's not as recent as the Vikings. It was the Anglo-Saxon
Before the Vikings.
Yeah, it was like an Anglo-Saxon king well before that, in what would have been the Dark Ages, but yet it had all this magnificent stuff." So, the part that's fascinating about that is, when they talked about the funeral of Prince Philip today. One of the things that he added to it, originally there were only going to be like 60 people there. But then they said, but now another 30 had been added at his insistence, that they found out later. And what it turns out it really was, it's all of, Prince Philip was really descended from a lot of Germans. He was part of the Saxon, the Anglo-Saxon. And to make up for the fact that when he was married and at that time, here you have, when you talk about an Anglo-Saxon conflict, England with all the Anglos were looking at World War I and then later World War II. And part of what happened in England historically, people may not know this, is that the House of Windsor, we all think of Windsor, with Windsor ties and Windsor Castle. That's not a name that was associated with any of the royalty. They actually adopted the whole House of Windsor thing because there was such anti-German sentiment in the country. And here, people that really understood, they understood that basically the British monarchy is it includes a huge amount of German ancestors and Greek, a bunch of other interesting things. So he literally was not allowed to have these people attend their wedding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were barred from attending the wedding, and to make up
It's
for that,
11:15.
he included them at his funeral.
Oh, awesome.
And I thought, now there's a bit of Anglo-Saxon history.
There
for
you
people
go.
that really want to know
pretty
about
cool.
Anglo-Saxon. All right, you know what? We're going to talk about muons.
Muons.
Or
Love
muons.
muons.
Is it muons? Is it muons? Are you a cat person or are you a cow person? Muons, muons. We're going to look at that briefly because I had so many people ask me about that story last week.
That's so cool.
We've got cave dirt. We've got monkey dactyls. Robert, you probably you don't have any monkey dactyl fossils here.
I do not know.
We got some cool stuff, colorizing, evaporation. I have the order form for your new ECAT SK LED light.
lighting. Good.
And of course, we have charts. I'll tell you what, because we have so many topics, I'm just going to ask people. I have a thing on Michigan. Michigan is looking very serious.
It is bad.
And I have that chart there, but let's take a quick look at the variant chart because you had a little prediction about where the B117 might be this week.
Yes, I did.
I'm going to scroll down.
And how are we doing here? Let's
Here we go.
scroll down,
I
scroll down.
have the Center for Disease Control's SARS-CoV-2 variants.
Oh, my.
and,
Okay,
ooh.
so we're at...
Okay, if you put your hover over it, last week it was at 27. This week it's at 44. Now that's actually, of course I would expect that to happen because the week before it was 11 and then it went to 27. And we were concerned that it would go from 27 to double that plus.
But it can only go so
Right.
far because it's
has-
going to bounce up against the other ones.
And it also depends on
44.1%.
So that's a serious thing to say. So please look at these charts. Look at this. The Michigan data that's more complete is there too. But, there's so much to cover today that I was just wow. And again, I wanted to get my little bass ukulele in here, but
I must say that I really miss the old graphs. I really do.
yeah, I like this. One of the things about people that do graphs is they are, of course, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
They really know their stuff.
Yep.
And part of what they do is they think, well, people are going to want to have lots of precise information. And what happens is you look at it and it's like, oh my gosh. It's like when you walk into a computer store and you go, gee, which computer do I want? And you go, oh, I have to decide between 35 of them, that kind of thing. It gets tough to watch. So, hey, the big story, I'm going to have to say probably the biggest story this week in the COVID thing.
Is the J&J pause?
Yeah, let's click on that.
Okay,
We're going to
let's
talk
do
about
that.
some of this real quick, and then we'll try to get to other stories. And again, I did give my shout out to good friend Steve Novotny and the folks who were paying attention to that. We have just like I said, spoiler alert. There's a little story coming up that will make something that he said actually be sort of prescient. You have to go look up that word too right now. No. People with rare blood clots after COVID-19 share an uncommon immune response.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Says some who get AstraZeneca's or Johnson & Johnson's shot make antibodies that spark clots.
Yeah, this is so. Anyway, this is a picture of what they're kind of showing. This clot, you see little red blood
That's
cells.
an interesting image. Wow.
And this story is actually it's been very scary to a lot of people. And I saw Dr. Fauci say what I think is a very important way to look at it. He says the fact that we're looking at this, that we found it, that we're telling people about it is important.
Is good.
Because first of all, it talks about it goes to the transparency and trying to get all the good information. The other thing that's really important in this issue is this is a particular reaction that if you saw in a normal situation, they talk about that in this really excellent article. It has to do as they have finally figured this whole thing out. It has to do with a platelet factor 4, PF4,
Right.
which is a weird immune response that causes your platelets to form clots, which is so weird. If you know blood chemistry, usually you know that platelets are there to do that, but
Right.
you don't expect it to be spontaneous. So, long story short on this, and it's important for people. A couple things that are interesting about it. I had mentioned that there had been a pause in the Johnson & Johnson, and somebody was thinking, well, what? What do you mean there was a what? What does the pause have to do with anything? About that particular vaccine? And the point that I had kind of was making is that that Johnson and Johnson and AstraZeneca are both adenovirus delivery. They deliver the vaccine using like an adenovirus, which are similar to, and a lot of people felt that the reaction is actually to the delivery system. Another reason why our patch thing made more sense.
The patch would make a whole lot more sense
because
now, wouldn't it?
if you're going to use a virus to deliver a vaccine, you have to understand that among a population of people, some people are going to react to that virus. So
Right.
anyway, this is a really, really good article. Please read through it. The most important thing I'd like you to take from it is that they have pretty much figured this out. And the reason why it's important to let people know and to be watching for this is that if you were a person who started developing, some symptoms that you thought were related to this, it turns out they can test, it says here, healthcare workers can test easily for the PF4. And if you have a positive thing,
Right.
they can give you a bunch of different anticoagulants. Now, why is that important? The reason why it's important is that in a normal situation, you would give people heparin. Yeah, it says up here, patients typically who get this kind of blood clot are treated with a very common anticoagulant, heparin.
Okay.
And so the problem is this particular thing, it would be the heparin would actually attach to the PF4 protein, and it would cause the response to attack worse. It'd be worse.
It says here like adding fuel to the fire, and it may cause them to develop more clots.
So,
wow.
So the fact
that's really interesting.
Where we are with this story is pretty much that if this is an issue, it's something that you can easily test. For if you start to have any effects, but you could even test. You could, if you start to feel any side effects or something that makes you think, typically it's also been among younger women, if you're an at-risk group, it's like by really getting ahead of this and doing all the work, it looks like we're going to be able to safely use those vaccines again with the caution in mind about this thing.
So it says here, of the 23 patients who received the AstraZeneca's jab and had symptoms of clots or low platelets, 21 tested or this antibody to
the
PF4.
Yeah.
So we can probably use that again now, right? We just have to heck for people.
Yeah, so it's but okay. I worry because so many people are worried for various reasons about vaccines, and it's an important thing that we try to get, as Dr. Fauci was saying to somebody over this last couple of days, that it's about being transparent and getting good information out there. And the fact he points out that this shouldn't scare people. This should let people be more assured that things are safe and being transparent. Now, you may say, why did I put this 23,000 BC? This is a cool story, and it says I'm thinking we're roughly 2,000 years after the BCE, the Christian era, the BC.
So it says here a coronavirus epidemic may have hit East Asia about 25,000 years ago.
Yeah,
and descendants of the outbreak may have inherited some DNA that affects their response to COVID-19.
Yeah, this is like an amazing story.
After 25,000 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it says here that an ancient coronavirus, or perhaps a closely related pathogen, triggered an epidemic among ancestors of present-day East Asians, roughly 25,000 years ago. And this is a rather, I'm sure there's a deep in the weeds thing, but if you go through this, it explains that how the analysis shows that it says analysis of 2,000 people showed genetic changes in response to the epidemic accumulated over the next 20,000 years or so. So this would be, of course, an evolutionary geneticist that would figure this stuff out. This is really, it's a very fascinating story, and it talks about going through a database and as it would be, like it means that some people actually, it's almost like during the stories of the plague years, that people who were survivors and then passed on certain resistances, that's still in our system. So, in fact, I think somewhere in here it even mentions that they had found a correlation between people that had Neanderthal, genes or
Oh, isn't
more
that
than.
interesting?
Oh, down here it says the findings follow related evidence that a set of inherited Neanderthal gene variants raises the risk of getting COVID-19.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, that's really a very fascinating story.
So, so wait a second. So
Yeah.
it could be that when everyone's always saying, "So what happened to the Neanderthals?"
Well, there you
it
are.
could have been something like this.
well, there's no question that
Boy, that's an interesting concept.
that if you're looking at a situation here where they're talking about 25,000 years we're talking about a very long piece of time in genetic
Yes, we are.
history. And yet the evidence is still there for Professor Colombo and his
Mm-hmm.
graduate students to figure this out. Isn't
That's
that
awesome.
a fascinating
That's
story?
really cool.
Again, I'm finding myself thinking, these are the kind of stories that you could spend a whole hour on.
Easily.
Now, this next one, I'm going to let you look at this one, Robert.
Vaxxas patches?
Vaxxas patch. Now, you will remember, Robert, that Vaxxas was one of the companies that actually had been awarded, hundreds of thousands. Now, Vaxxas did not get the $2 billion
Okay.
that Johnson & Johnson.
So
those
it says
people
here
got.
that Vaxxas Technology awarded NSF, which is National Science Foundation, and DARPA funding for development of mRNA-based single-dose, refrigeration-free vaccine patch.
What? What are you talking
Sounds like
about?
a great idea.
Well, now, before we come back and look at a few other things, now scroll down and you'll see some little bullet points. I'll let you read
Okay.
them because I know you like to read these things.
I love it. Says refrigeration free using the patented silk protein matrix stabilization technology.
What?
Boy, that just rolls off the tongue,
It
doesn't
does.
it?
Smooth.
Single dose administration enabled by MIMIX trademark. Sustained release formulation. I love it when that happens. And then painless application. Oh, I just want to say that I got my jab number 2. Jab number 1, I didn't feel a thing. Jab number 2, I thought somebody put a railroad spike in my
Really?
arm.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Don't scare people away. Now, come on.
Oh, but it was painless. And then the third, a bullet point, painless application via the MIMIX trademark skin patch.
Yeah.
Says the total funding award will be up to $2 million if all milestones are achieved, including $256,000 phase number 1 SBIR grant from the NSF. Vaxxas will be using the funding to integrate mRNA-based vaccines and gene modulators provided through a calibration with. Okay, good.
So it's Georgia Tech, and it's
Georgia
this
Tech.
MyMix. The patch is also compatible with a wide range of COVID-19 vaccine candidates. So in other words, it could be used with. The mRNA was the toughest
Yeah.
one, and is one of the reasons why mRNA was like a revolutionary vaccine. But it also brought its problems because it's very unstable. So that's why you had all the refrigeration.
Right.
So that's part of what they're looking at. Now, here's the thing I want you to look at that I said reflects back onto what Steve Novotny was saying about, there's probably going to be stuff coming out. I
There-
missed
there
this
will
story.
definitely be stuff
But I
coming
want
out.
you to go back and look at the date that this story was
All right,
released.
the date, July 22nd.
No,
Excuse me, January 22nd, 2021.
Yeah. So now I'm just going to ask you, Robert, since you're a student of political science,
Oh, I
is there
try.
anything that happened around maybe January 20th?
January 20th. Okay, they weren't playing
No.
a baseball yet.
No, it wasn't
Footballs, no.
No.
Wait,
I'm going to give you a clue.
The
Dun, dun,
only
dun,
thing
dun,
that comes to
dun,
mind is
dun,
that
dun.
we were switching one president for the other.
Well, there you go.
Could
okay.
that have anything to do with this?
I'm just saying it's
Just saying. And this came out 2 days after that, saying, "Oh, by the way, there's a patch."
well, but and also we're talking about we're not talking about just little some division within the CCD or NIH.
No.
This is like National Science Foundation and DARPA
And-
together.
Or HERPA.
So anyway,
Again, refrigeration-free, single-dose, painless application. And what they're not saying is that you can stretch the vaccine at least 10 times.
well, it's because it's an
At
it's,
least, because it goes into the skin, not into your flesh.
Intradermal, yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm saying good news.
That's great news. Super news.
As much as I'm not I don't want to get into what so much what didn't happen in the past and get caught up into the politics of all. This is really good news, and it literally came 2 days after the inauguration. Now, again, I have this little quick link on Anglo-Saxons. We talked a lot about Anglo-Saxons today, but if this is the trailer for the dig. In fact, I'm going to let you play a little bit of it, Robert, because you know what? It's kind of fun to hear these things.
Should we take a look at them then?
Right.
I'm going to turn up my...
Things like this are usually done through museums.
Yes, but with the war coming, they couldn't embark upon any new ventures.
Well, I've been on digs since I was old enough to hold a trowel. My father taught me.
Based on a true story.
What are they?
We're standing in someone's graveyard, I reckon. Viking? Oh, maybe older.
Anglo-Saxon.
Mr. Brown is an archaeologist.
Well, I'm an excavator.
You've come to dig up the mounds.
So you think there's something beneath?
Who are those men?
They're from the museum.
Ye gods!
They've come to take over your project.
I think you'd better come and see.
That's what
Why would
usually
anyone want
happens.
to bury a ship?
I'd expect this is a grave of a warrior or a king.
But there's more. There's much more.
War's looming. All hands are on deck to excavate before hostilities begin.
The Dark Ages are no longer dark.
Everyone's going to want a piece, and this is your find. Why else will you be playing around in the dirt while the rest of the country prepares for
That's what I
war?
tell my wife when I'm out there
Why
Why are you
digging.
playing around in the dirt?
From the first human handprint on a cave wall, we're part of something continuous.
That's true. Very nicely
It's very
said.
fleeting. I've learnt that. Would you have dinner with me?
What? Hey, wait a minute.
Yes.
It has moments you should seize.
A man could dig the earth his whole life through. Not find anything like I've discovered here.
That's what I
Steer us
say
steady,
too.
Mr. Brown. We're coming towards the edge of the atmosphere.
You say the word, and I'll dig.
The dig.
Nice. I just highly recommend it to anybody. So that's
Looks
really-
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, at my house, like one day I found, a piece of glass and a BB. And the next day I found a 12 by 12 giant frame for a barn door that was linked to a piece of local history. Wow.
That's awesome.
I know. It makes me feel like makes me feel less like I worked all day and got, scratched up. All right, listen, muons. I was
Muon.
literally out in the middle of this area. I'm grubbing out, for everybody that loves, I almost feel guilty for cutting down things, right? Like don't cut down trees, don't cut down plants. But if you have an area of, say, farmland that at some time you would hear maybe from the extension agent, Robert. This is what you would hear maybe like in back in the 20s or 30s. If fencing is expensive, but you could put a big row of multiflora rose, and that'll grow into a hedgerow to keep the cows in, right? Now you wouldn't
There's
worry.
a possibility.
You wouldn't worry that maybe it would spread everywhere else because it sounded like a good idea. The other one was olive autumn. Autumn olive was another
Yes.
thing that's wonderful. And you remember Brook Hills Park
And
was
it
completely
spreads everywhere.
Well, it spreads like a rabid
weed,
octopus. And
yeah.
Well, the area that I'm actually clearing out because I'm trying to expose what used to be my wonderful black raspberry patch has autumn olive. Then it has multiflora rose. Like if you have autumn olive and a multiflora rose gets down next to it, it grows up into the canopy
my
and covers
goodness.
it. And then the wild grape joins it. And then we also have another vining thing that's really bad in our area is it's a Oriental bittersweet.
Yes.
Which is an invasive. We have American bittersweet, but the Oriental is really, and so the thing is when they all get in there together, you start to understand what a composite material is. It's just unbelievable. And of course, I'm going to say that two out of the four things that I just mentioned usually have some kind of spiky if you've ever been whacked
Thorns.
across the face with multiflora rose,
Yes, I have.
you'll practically bleed to death. So anyway, interesting stuff. We're going to go on. While I was doing this, my good friend called and he was asking me about muons. I'm going, what? I'm out here digging and you're calling about muons? And the thing I've been astonished about is how many people have paid attention to or caught this thing about the research at the Fermi Lab. So let's click on the. Now the thing is, he said muons and I said muons, and I was thinking, which is it? This is
Okay.
really well. Let's
Here.
I'll tell you what. You
I will click on this. I am all set. Ready?
go ahead and click on it, and I'm gonna follow too. But
A major breakthrough in our understanding of the universe. It all has to do with the behavior of subatomic particles called muons.
He's saying
Experiments
muon.
at a lab near the
Okay.
U.S. city of Chicago have shown that muons move at a rate that's faster than expected, potentially unlocking the secrets of a previously undiscovered fifth force of nature.
wait a minute.
That's always cool.
We're gonna listen
This
to
could
this.
be the door to a whole new world of physics. For years, researchers have been using this ring, made of superconducting magnets, to accelerate the tiniest building blocks of matter, called muons,
Muons.
until they're almost as fast as the speed of light.
This guy's
That's
Anglo-Saxon.
when they can observe how muons interact with other forces and particles. And the results show that muons actually behave completely different to how current theory says they should. Up until now, something called the Standard Model explained all subatomic particles and their characteristics, such as charge, mass, and lifespan. But scientists have observed that the behavior of these muons suggest particles and
Muons.
forces exist outside of this theory.
Oh, hear that? That's a
do.
Everything that we can see in our universe, everything around us, can be explained by a few building blocks. These blocks describe the Standard Model of particle physics. One group of these particles makes up matter.
Oh, pull over.
The others transfer force. This theory can explain 3 of these forces, but the fourth
not
force,
gravity.
can't be explained in this way. This is the force that keeps planets in their orbits, and that affects everything that has mass. When the universe was created by the Big Bang, these 4 forces combined. That's why the Standard Model can't explain what exactly happened at the beginning of time. The muons experiment could help us plug these fundamental gaps in our scientific knowledge and help us solve mysteries that have been confusing astrophysicists for decades.
Nothing worse than a confused astrophysicist.
But first, more exact measurements and testing needs to be carried out to make sure the muons' unexplained behavior really can be attributed to unknown particles or forces.
All right, the mystery of the muons. To talk about that, I'm joined now by Alex Keshavarzi, a research associate in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Manchester in the UK. It's good to have you on the
Anglo-Saxon.
program.
Obviously.
So how excited are you about this discovery?
Well, I think it's fair to say that we're plausibly excited.
Plausibly.
We've taken a very, very precise measurement of the behavior of muons, as you explained in your intro,
He's a muon
and
guy
done a
too.
very, very precise calculation of what that behavior should be, and we found that they don't agree. And what this hints at is that there could be new particles or forces contributing to the way that the muon behaves with the rest of the universe.
I mean,
Now, I say plausibly excited because we measured this for the first time about 20 years ago.
See, that's cool.
And statistically, there's about a 1 in 40,000 chance that this could be a fluke, that this could be, messed
That's
up.
amazing.
And the gold standard we set it by is 3.5 billion. That's the standard that we want to set, and as we go
5.
forward with the experiment, that we will hopefully reach.
well, we heard in that report that this could be proof, plausible proof that we could have an unknown force out there or unknown particles. So explain to the layman here among us, what exactly does that mean?
Well, what it means is that by comparing this very precise measurement with this very precise calculation, is that we've shown to an extreme likelihood that there's something about the fundamental structure of the universe that we really don't understand. And if that new measurement and this discrepancy between the two would stand up and would stand the test of time, it will be proof that there's something missing in the model of our building blocks of what the universe is made of. And now this could be a new force, like you said in the intro, it could be a new particle, but it will in general influence the universe around us and all of its contexts, including muons. And in that sense, will define a new paradigm in how we look at what the universe is made of.
Wow,
Could it
that's awesome.
possibly help explain some of the biggest mysteries in the universe?
I thought this was cool, this part coming up.
Yeah, so there are several big mysteries that most physicists agree that are present and we can't explain. The largest being that we don't really know what 95% of our universe is made of. We know that 70% of it is made of something called dark energy, which is what we use to explain why the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate. And there's also the other 25% is dark matter. And we know that the dark matter has to be there because it influences astrophysical parts of the universe when we look out to the stars, but we don't know what that dark matter is. Wow. And it could be that should this result from the Muon G1S2 experiment in Chicago be proved to be a new physics discovery, that it could be that source of dark matter that as of yet we haven't found.
Isn't that awesome?
Well, let's say that the numbers are in your favor and that this discovery turns out to be real. Are we going to have to rewrite the physics books?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the standard model that was described in the intro works very, very well and describes a lot of the universe around us, and we can do tests and show those to be correct. But it's still true that if this result was to stand up, it will be something very fundamental about the structure of the universe that we haven't yet observed. And clearly there's something missing given what we see when we look out at the stars, and everyone accepts this. Mm-hmm. But if we discover a new force or a new particle, it will open up a new era in attempting to understand what constitutes, the matter all around us.
Alex Keshavarzi helping us understand the mystery of the muons. It's fascinating. Alex, thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
All right, so now
Nicely done.
I actually have another. I'm going to jump quickly to the Big Think.
Okay, the Big Think.
This is a nice little group. Adam Frank and Marcello Gleiser have this little site, and it's another thing covering muons. And well, as I said, the one guy called them muons, and then the question that comes to me is do the British sit in their laboratory and say muons, and we say muons, but. Anyway, this is another page that I think has some really good information, and it gets down to the reason why I like this one. He has some bullet points here at the top. First question, what's the world made of? New experimental results, which we're looking into the magnetic properties of the muon. And it mentions it being a heavier cousin of the electron. Right. I told my friend that the mass of the muon was actually, it's basically like some people call it a heavy electron, which doesn't really, but it's like what, 200 times?
100 plus times.
Yeah, and they're talking about their other bullet point is that finding this out is a celebration of the human spirit and our insatiable curiosity to understand the world and our place in it. Now that's a wonderful thing to say.
Yep.
The thing that is cool about this is if you do scroll down on this page, there's a nice little synopsis of how we see the world and the first ideas of atoms and particles. Talks about the deficits. Then it starts getting into the leptons and the quarks but the neat thing is there's a really nice chart down here, which is the standard model of elementary particles.
There you are. There all the stuff.
And it's when you look this over, it makes you realize how few of these you might be familiar with. And then when you look at the quarks, you go, well, there's the up and the down, there's the charm and the strange, and there's the top and the bottom. And we have, gluons and photons and the Higgs boson and the graviton. And of course, if you're on Twitter, they have the tweeton too, Robert. The tweeton is what powers the...
I did not know that.
You did not know that? Oh, sorry. I shouldn't have told you that. All right. Anyway, so the other thing that is fascinating to me in a lot of this discussion that kept coming up was the quantum vacuum.
Oh, yes.
And I was surprised at how little I could find. So I have a quick little thing. If you go to the quantum vacuum.
Quantum vac? Okay.
Let's, again, these are stories that I want people to revisit. And this is the Wikipedia, kind of a listing of a whole bunch of things that talks about in quantum field theory, the quantum vacuum state, this is a lot of stuff to go through. And, if you are not, say, as Robert is, associated with a lot of, the physics, the QEDs and the QCDs and quantum chromodynamics and all these other things, there's a lot for you to wade through here. Now, the
virtual
one thing that I thought
particles.
was interesting was the Feynman diagram.
Oh,
over here,
yeah.
Robert.
Off to the right-hand side.
Yeah,
there.
and it does mention that Feynman, along with Tominaga and Schwinger, people received the Nobel Prize in 1965 for their reformulation of what was the original vacuum of quantum electrodynamics. You know, they got a Nobel Prize for this. But so if you click on the diagram, Robert, let's click
All right,
on that
let's
diagram.
click on the diagram.
I think it comes up in a bigger. Oh no, it comes into a separate Wikipedia page, and. So
It's 11:45.
I'll let you explain what it says this
Thank you, sir.
diagram is
All right.
doing down here.
So I'm going to go to.
You can click on that, and it'll show you.
So are we going are we going to quantum field theory?
No, and if you click on that little diagram on the right.
Okay, I did.
Oh, it didn't come to Feynman diagram.
Oh, here, there we go. Feynman diagram. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I see, and I would say to myself, okay, this is. Oh, if you click on it, it gets even larger. Wow.
Yeah.
So we have an electron and a positron on
Right.
the left, and I'm not sure what the arrow is. You know, really.
All right. So an electron and its antimatter counterpart, a positron merge. They will annihilate each other and create a gamma ray, which is that little blue squiggly line. That little blue squiggly line, that gamma ray can then get energy from the quantum region around it, the space and time around it, which is seething with energy, and can borrow energy for short periods of time to create other things.
Yeah, it shows,
and
shows
so
the pair of the other.
so we're working a quark and an anti-quark, and then and then a little glue on. That's that little green squiggly coming off. The bottom line when you talk about quantum mechanics is that under normal conditions we think of we think of the universe as a bank. You can walk over to the bank. You can say, "Hey, I'd like to borrow, $10," and you can do that. Well, it turns out that quantum mechanics works on a very small level. It turns out that in the quantum mechanical bank, you can walk up to the bank and say, "I don't have any money here at all, but I'd like to borrow $1 million."
Okay.
And they're going, "You can't really do that." And they say, "Well, under a certain circumstance, you can borrow $1 million, but you can only have it for 1/100th of a second." And you go, "Okay."
The interest would be low on that.
Yeah.
No.
And so you can have $1 million, but it's only for a very, very short period of time. And during that short period of time, you can do things with it. Right? But you say, "Well, you know what I really want? I want $1 billion." And they say, "Well, but that's going to be 1/100th of a 1/100th of a 1/100th of a second." And so you can do other things with that. Well, so when you're thinking about these virtual particles that are popping in and out, those virtual particles are being borrowed from the bank for short periods of time. Well,
And then returned.
Yeah. But the thing is, you can't keep them for long. You have to give them back.
Dang.
And so it turns out that if you added enough energy to a localized piece of space-time, when you're borrowing the money to make these little particles, if you add enough energy to them, that little particle that pops out will now be there forever. And you're going, "Well, where did this thing come from?" And you're going, "Well, it came from the bank, but I added some energy to it, and it is now realized."
Wow.
It's just fantastically neat.
And this whole page, the biggest thing that I kind of, I didn't realize everything we were talking about, but elicited was, as you said, the thing that is amazing to people that are looking at lots of stuff like 0-point energy,
Yes.
all kinds of things, is the idea that when you think of space, but people say, "Well, space is nothing. It's
Right.
just nothingness." But the models and the stuff we're talking about here, when they get to the quantum vacuum, they literally, as you said, stuff pops into existence and disappears.
Then out of existence.
And there's a lot going on there. So,
Yeah.
so if you want to this is something very cool to get
It's
into,
very,
but
very cool.
it'll take you down many corridors as you would. All right, so I'll tell you what. Let's jump to cave dirt because I thought this was kind of fascinating, especially since we did the story about the 25,000-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that has been really fascinating as we've looked at stories about archaeology, and of course we have like the Denisovans and the Neanderthals, all these different things. This is a story. I remember we were amazed when people finally figured out that they could find a lot out about, say, like if they found a tooth in a Neanderthal piece of a skull or something, that they could take the plaque from their teeth.
Yeah.
And they could do cool stuff. Well, this is a new finding that I think is just fascinating. They're finding out that cave dirt. Okay, they're looking at a cave in Spain. If you scroll down, it says 105,000 years ago, 105,000 years ago, artifacts show that Neanderthals inhabited. They had hafted stone tools. They butchered red deer.
Wow.
They made fires.
They made fires.
They shed blood, and they waste materials the babies threw up on the floor. Well, here's the part that's fascinating. We have now gotten to. They're talking about this geneticist Matthias Meyer reported.
It says all that DNA accumulates in the dirt floors.
Yes.
So you've got all the blood and the puke and the feces and everything.
Well, and stuff that.
Wow.
But the reason why this is so amazing.
After 105,000 years.
Well, the thing that's so amazing is because of new techniques, they're able to ignore all kinds of other, when they're looking for particular markers or particular things. And in this case, it's a big story about how they're looking for mitochondrial DNA, and they're able to screen out all this other stuff and get this really determinative and accurate information from this just big pile of dirt that's in the caves. You can imagine what this means for other investigations in other places. It's just an amazing thing. It says cave dirt DNA is likely to yield many more clues. Paleogeneticist says that analyzing DNA from sediments at dozens of sites worldwide. Soon we'll get some higher resolution, fine scale view of ancient humans.
This is going to be amazing.
This is really cool. So anyway, I thought that was a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Now, Robert.
Wow, I can't wait to read through that. That looks really cool.
And again, I do kind of apologize for the fact that I think maybe I put up so many stories that I think are fascinating that we should probably spend more time.
That's okay.
I do want everybody to know out there, one of the main reasons why we do this with the live links and we leave them up forever, as long as we can, is that a lot of these stories take some time to wade through.
Yes, they do.
And I don't want to, I don't want you to think that we're just doing a disservice to the stories by rushing through them too quickly. But I'm looking at how much time we have. Maybe we'll jump around at a few things. I'll tell you what, Robert, since we're talking about interesting energy and particles jumping, let's look at the ECAT SK LED. Do you see that link over there to the right? So click on that, and I am kind of amazed because do you realize that we can now pre-order?
I did not know that.
The ECAT SK LED, and people are going, now you guys have been talking about this Andre Rossi and his energy catalyzer.
So it says special office per unit for the first 1 million pre-ordered lamps at $25.
Okay. Now,
so
spiffy looking unit, right?
Okay, so
let's look at it.
I'm looking at this. Okay, so for $25 bucks, this is a working ECAT lamp.
Yes. Now we'll look at some of this stuff quick because it says, first of all, you don't pay anything until they
Sure.
Like his thing is that if they get 1 million orders, they can afford to sell them for $25 a piece. You pay zero. This is just a pre-order thing, just like if you're ordering stuff, and then you could submit your order, and they'll send you a thing saying it's.
This is interesting.
Now go up to the right-hand side. Let's look at the ECAT SK LED and see what it says.
All right.
Turn on the light.
Save money and help the planet. Okay.
Well, first of all, it's a very spiffy-looking unit.
Very cool. Yep. The ECAT SK LED is a compact LED-based lamp with a luminosity of 100 watts. Standard LED lamp, yet consumes only about 4 watts of electric power. Wow.
Okay, now for a second now, at first I was a little disappointed because I thought that this was like a standard 100-watt bulb, right? Mm-hmm. But it consumed 4 watts, and I'm thinking, well, this isn't impressive. This doesn't sound that good. But Robert, they're talking about the kind of floodlights you see at giant stadiums.
Yeah.
That it's actually 100 watts of power.
Right.
You know, like so 100 watt. When they talk about 100 watt standard LED, like you would have at a big stadium or something, that's like 11,000 lumens.
Right.
11, 12, depending on what it is.
It says this makes it over 10 times more energy efficient than any other LED lamp, meaning that it simply is the most energy efficient lamp ever made. So when you talk about 100 watts, that's 100 watts LED, not 100 watts incandescent.
Right. It's 100. And if you have any LED lights, you know that you can get you go to get one that's like an outdoor.
Holy cow.
Well, and I even went on Amazon to see what they really, they can be like hundreds of dollars for a standard 100 watt LED. But the difference is, this one only consumes 4 watts of power to produce what a
100 watts of
an LED one would do. It's that much more, 10 times more
LED
efficient.
light.
Anyway, this is a fascinating thing, and for $25, I'm probably going to pre-order.
I think I'm going to have to order one. I don't know what I would use it for yet, but
no, I don't either. The other thing is that they have just one of the changes that they said they're going to make is somebody said, well, this is a plug-in thing. Why don't you make it 12 volt too, so it could be used?
Right.
And so they're going to do. He said, well, they've already adapted it to do that. And then somebody else said, why don't you just make it USB? And they're going to do that too, probably.
Whoa.
So anyway, I just wanted to put that story up for you to see. And like I said, at first I thought they were saying it's going to be like a 100-watt bulb, but I'm going, well, that's stupid.
No. It's 100 watts of power.
Yeah, and if you want to get a sense of what that's like, you could go to, you could Google Amazon 100-watt LED light, and you'll find out it's the giant ones they use at runways on airports and things like that. The ones that will, you can imagine how bright we're. Okay, so, wow, we're looking at... I'll tell you what, Robert, because we have a lot of different stories here, but I'm going to tell you the other one that I thought was really fascinating. Okay. And I want to be able to take enough time to go through this, because initially when I read the story, again, I thought, am I missing something? And that's, I'm willing to admit that. We've talked about different ways that people are going to use sunlight to purify water and stuff, right? Okay, so we're going, so this shows this device. This shows it like it's got like a structure to it.
Evaporate?
Yeah.
Okay, evaporate.
It says, according to this, sunlight to solve the world's clean water crisis. Well, that's a nice idea, isn't it?
That's a great idea. Let's certainly do that.
And there's a little, looks like a computer-generated, idea of what it might look like. And it says it's cost-effective. It could, deliver safe drinking water to millions of people, cheap, sustainable materials. Okay, now we need to scroll down, because the parts of this that are really fascinating, I think you're going to really get a kick out of this. It's talking about, it says in recent years there have been a lot of solar evaporation techniques, that have been, but they had different inefficiencies. So what they have done, and again, I want you have to look through this and take your time reading this, and I know with the time left we might not cover it sufficiently. So it says at the heart of the system is a highly efficient photothermal structure that sits on the surface of water and converts sunlight to heat.
Okay.
Now, the cool thing about it, when you scroll down, is that
focusing energy precisely on the surface to rapidly evaporate the uppermost portion of the liquid. That makes sense.
Now, if you scroll down, it says we have developed a technique that not only prevents any loss of the solar energy, because they just have the solar energy right where it should be. A lot of the other ones, the energy gets absorbed because it's sitting in the water. But what it does, it has a system of fins, and if you think of a heat sink on a transistor and stuff like that, it has a system where, so these fins are in the water, and the way it's since it's not just a surface, but it's like a 3D structure, it has a heat sink that means that all the surfaces of the evaporator actually remain lower than the surrounding water.
Gotcha.
So, we're going to run out on this, but the big deal is that scrolling down to where the efficiency are. This is a nice little article. Basically, its efficiency almost seems not to make sense, because it'll 10 to 20 liters of fresh water per day, but because of the way they've designed it, it actually absorbs energy from the water.
The
and
water
everything.
itself.
So it ends up being like 170% efficient or something. Whereas I can't believe I can't find it while I'm looking for it.
170% efficient.
Well, here
I
it is.
love it.
It's a technique not only prevents any loss, but it actually draws additional energy from the bulk water and the surrounding environment, as you would expect, meaning the system operates at 100% efficiency for the solar input, but then it draws up to another 170% from the water and the environment. Is that crazy or what?
Oh, that's too unbelievable.
Well, it's a cool design. Hey, listen, I have 10 seconds just to invite people back to Radio Science News here at 11 till 12 on Saturday mornings. And on the page, you can see ways to hear us again.